everything you want to see out of a sophomore quarterback, knowing that when the time comes, he's capable of going and winning you a football game. Like, that's what he's done so far. So I'm not surprised that it hasn't been, that he's not getting a ton of attention right now. But again, if he continues to stay within the offense and just take the throws that are there constantly, time and time again, Ohio State's going to move the football routinely. They're going to win games routinely, and those kind of things will come as well. So,
honestly, going off the way you answered that question, I wanted to ask you: Do you think Ryan Day has become more comfortable with how he and how he gets these wins? I really think that, and I was talking to someone earlier, a Michigan fan, and I told them this team reminds me of their 2023 team, just a little bit different, where I think they had to run the ball to open up the pass, and where we passed the ball to open up the run. But I think that what's really fun to watch is that we're still willingly running that ball, and I thought you could see that in the game against the first few drives against Washington. But what do you think about that? Do you think Ryan Day is okay with knowing he doesn't have to score 40 anymore? He can lean on the defense.
Absolutely, but I mean, also at the same time, you have to go when you go back to that game on Saturday. Like, Ohio State was in the process of scoring 40+ points in that game. Like, you can't not get a first down on 4th and 1 at the 5-yard line, and you can't fumble a punt when you're about to be set up with plus field position at the 35-yard line. Like, Ohio State was in the process of going and putting 40 up in that game, and they shot themselves in the foot. And you can't have 3 possessions and a half and also expect to score a lot of points as well. So, like, I don't think the running approach, the emphasis on the running game early on was like hey, let's just grind this out because we have a defense that's going to take us home anyways. Mm-hmm. They were running the football well. Like, they were still going to score points running the football, and they just didn't capitalize on that. So I do think that there's something to be said about, in this day and age in college football, as long of a season as it is. I'm not saying he would ever do anything to at the detriment of winning the football game, just to see it. Like, I think you want to see things that you want to know come later in the year when situations arise. Can you rely on this? Is it there? Can you run the football? Is it something that you think you can hang your hat on if need be? And you try to kind of figure out some of those things throughout the course of the season, because it is a long season, and whether anybody wants to acknowledge it or not. And again, I am not saying that Ryan Day doesn't care about whether he loses a football game or not, because he just wants to figure some stuff out. But at the end of the day, you can afford to, not play well or even lose a football game and still ultimately get to your goals. So while he's not going to call a game to say, like, come hell or high water, we're going to do this. If it loses this game, so be it. We'll move on. But you want to figure some of these things out as well. And I think, Ryan Day believed that they could go on and run the football against Washington, and he was right. They could. At the end of the day, I think they believe they can win football games in a lot of different ways, certainly knowing that defense is going to hold up its end as well. And that's a really good place to be in. So I don't really bat an eye at it when Ohio State wants to try to establish a run early on and do it with success. I still think when push comes to shove, this is a team that's going to play through its wide receivers. Everything that they figured out after getting beat by Michigan last year, like, hey, play through number 4 and the rest will take care of itself. Like, still think that's there. But I think right now, you need to figure out as a team, can you run the football when you have to? And there's, you need to figure that out. One thing I'll also add as well, I understand that at the end of the day, Ryan Day is always going to have, ultimate veto power on the headsets in the middle of a game. And, it's ultimately his offense. But, like, this is Brian Hartline being the trigger man of this offense right now. I've said this before, and I'll say it, constantly. When Ryan Day handed the offensive coordinator position to Brian Hartline, like, this was a very big moment for, the future of the Ohio State program. Brian Hartline's not going to want to be a receivers coach at Ohio State for the rest of his life, right? So, like, Ryan Day and Ohio State need this to work with Brian Hartline, an offensive coordinator, to keep him in the program and everything that he means to it. Like, they need this to work, which means Ryan has to know coming out of the season what he has or doesn't have an offensive coordinator in Brian Hartline. He needs to know if Brian Hartline can do it. So I don't think there's a lot of meddling right now as well. So I think what you're seeing right now, while Ryan is clearly very heavily involved in game planning throughout the week, I think what you're seeing right now is truly what Brian Hartline brings to the table as a first-year offensive coordinator, whether you like it or not. And Ryan needs to figure that out, and he can't meddle in it right now because he has to know what he has in it. And I think that's important to remember as well.
Yeah, and let me know if you were in the room. I bet you were in there when I forgot who asked Brian Hartline a question about the play calling.
Yeah.
And you could kind of tell it annoyed Brian. Yeah. you could tell. And I'm happy it did.
Yeah, because there's been so many questions since Brian was named the offensive coordinator about, like, obviously first year or first time, play caller. So how you don't know what you don't know as a first time doing anything, and you don't know how it's going to go, how your ascension or your progression is going to be, and then of course as you get closer, there's all these questions to Ryan and to Brian as well, about like how much Ryan's involved with it. I get questions all the time about like, hey, at what point do you think Ryan would just take over play calling again in the middle of the game if it's not going well with Brian Hartline? I'm like, that's not how it works. And so all those things, like, yeah, he was annoyed by it, rightfully so, because he's been fielding questions about it since he got the job or got the gig. So,
well, yeah, and the thing is, like, the reason I was so happy about how he attacked that question was because I hated hearing all offseason, oh, is Ryan Day really going to like give him the keys? And I'm like, he has to if he wants to keep him. Like,
yeah,
there's no other way. And people ask, why, because someone did ask me, because I've said plenty of times in that season in 2023, I understand why Ryan Day didn't just give the keys to him, because you have a new quarterback,
right?
It's a whole new thing. Where they say, well, what's the difference this year? Well, the difference this year is that it's well known now that you don't want to lose this guy. You can't lose him. Yeah. If he's going to leave, then let it be because he's a damn good offensive coordinator, not because he is the best recruiter and wide receiver coach. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I don't think there's any going backwards here for Ohio State. Either this works or, and maybe he's ultimately gone eventually as it is, because the next step would be to be a head coach, but that's a little bit maybe further down the line. Or, it doesn't work. And I don't really see Brian Hartline going back to just being, receivers coach and pass game coordinator.
Oh, you can't demote him.
So yeah, that's what I'm saying. So like, this is like, this works or it doesn't. And obviously what Brian Hartline means as a recruiter, what he means to develop in the receiver room, like that's really important to the Ohio State program. But I don't think there's any going back from this. So, they need it to work, and you better give them the opportunity to let them figure it out and see if you can make it work.
So coming to this week, Ohio State plays Minnesota. A team that I actually do really like going to the season. I had them getting to 8-4 in the regular season. I think they're a really good team. I think so far this season, their defense could be better.
Yeah.
They're not that efficient, but their offense is much better than most years. PJ Fleck, one of the better coaches in college football. Just some quick numbers here. In terms of offensive efficiency, Minnesota's at 65, defensively 47, so not that bad there. Total offense, 63rd, total defense, they're 9th in the nation. From what you've seen so far, Minnesota, in the first few weeks of the season, what do you think they do well? Is there anything that you think they do that can give Ohio State trouble?
I'm not going to sit here and lie and say I've seen a ton of Minnesota football this year. Usually, like Wednesday is when I kind of dive into whoever Ohio State's playing that week and kind of try to watch a couple of games or condensed games anyways and start to form opinions on what I think might happen or what might give Ohio State